We are literally wiring our minds directly into machines, and we are accidentally short-circuiting them. Right now, across the globe, we're plugging learners into incredibly advanced virtual reality headsets, expecting superhuman learning speeds. But instead, we are actively breaking their ability to process information. We have built a digital sensory hurricane, and our biological hardware is crashing. So, why does VR learning so often fail to deliver on those massive sci-fi promises? Well, it really comes down to a stark biological truth. You see, the human brain evolved for raw, physical survival in the wilderness. It evolved to track predators and forage for food. It absolutely did not evolve to absorb abstract, high-fidelity, digitized data streams beamed literally an inch from your eyeballs. When we force the mind into a badly designed virtual reality, it just doesn't learn. It triggers this massive cognitive overload. The brain is forced into an exhausting state of defense, frantically trying to process a relentless sensory bombardment instead of actually absorbing the lesson. Chapter 1: The Sensory Trap. Okay, so the foundational bottleneck we're dealing with here is our working memory. Your working memory is not a massive terabyte hard drive. It's a strictly limited, highly temporary buffer for processing new sensory input. Think of it like a 2-foot kitchen counter. Imagine you're tasked with preparing this incredibly complex 5-course meal, but the absolute only counter space you have in your entire kitchen is 2 feet wide. Now imagine someone starts cluttering that tiny, precious space with decorative spice racks, dirty napkins, and utensils you don't even need for the recipe. You literally cannot chop your vegetables. You are completely paralyzed. In a virtual environment, that 2-foot counter is your working memory. And the unnecessary clutter, that's the background noise, the flashy but useless visual animations, or clunky interface menus just hovering in your peripheral vision. To stop paralyzing the learner, cognitive engineers have to bypass this trap using what's called the Modality Principle. Basically, this principle states that we must distribute incoming data across entirely different sensory channels simultaneously, rather than jamming it all down a single narrow pathway. Let's look at sensory processing, like moving heavy cargo across a river. If you force all your visual instructions, all your floating text, and all your moving 3D models across one single bridge, your visual cortex, you create a massive grinding traffic jam. Learning completely stops. But if you open a second bridge, say by taking the floating text away and simply speaking the instructions into the learner's ears, you instantly distribute the flow. By offloading those verbal instructions to the auditory channel and keeping the visual field completely clean for the physical task itself, you literally double the brain's processing bandwidth. It's a total game changer. But that visual traffic jam creates our next massive hurdle, which is the split attention effect. This is the cognitive gap that opens up the exact moment a learner is forced to look back and forth between two separated pieces of data. Imagine trying to fix a complex virtual jet engine, but the instruction manual is floating off to your left. Looking back and forth is like trying to read a physical paper map while driving down a winding, dangerous mountain road at night. You look down, you lose your place on the map. You look up, you lose your place on the road. Every single time your eyes dart away from the engine, your brain has to burn precious metabolic energy just to reload the context of what you were doing. Which brings us to a really chilling realization about bad design. When sensory input exceeds capacity, learning stops and defensive triage begins. Let that sink in. If the VR environment is too cluttered, your brain simply stops trying to learn how to fix the jet engine. It just tries to survive the flashing lights and the noise.
Chapter 2: Etching the Brain.
Let's talk about intrinsic load. This is the unavoidable, raw difficulty of the subject itself. You can't just delete the complexity of advanced calculus or magically simplify the mechanical reality of a jet turbine without completely destroying what you're actually trying to teach. The complexity has to stay. So how do we support the brain through that? We use virtual scaffolding. Imagine standing at the bottom of a massive, sheer cliff face made of perfectly smooth rock. You obviously can't just jump to the top. So in step 1, the system provides full handholds, explicit, glowing, step-by-step guidance. Then, step 2. As your proficiency spikes, the system actively fades that guidance away, quietly removing the lower handholds. By step 3, you're making an independent ascent. The VR slowly forces your brain to transition from heavy, conscious effort right into automatic, effortless skill retrieval. I really want you to picture what is happening physically inside your head during this process. Imagine a dense, wild, overgrown forest. The very first time you try to walk through that thick brush, it is exhausting. Branches hit you in the face, roots trip you up, you constantly get knocked off course. But every time you walk that exact same path, every single time you rehearse the virtual procedure perfectly, you trample a little more grass, you break a few more branches, you clear the debris. Eventually, with enough perfectly guided repetition, that wild brush becomes a beautifully paved, wide-open trail. The scientific term for trampling that grass is synaptic consolidation. This is when temporary, fleeting electrical sparks in your brain are actively converted into permanent physical structural changes. When a virtual environment is designed perfectly, it forces specific rhythmic firing patterns across your hippocampus and neocortex. You are literally paving the trail inside your brain. But here is the catch, and it's a big one. You cannot clear a neural path during a sensory hurricane. If the VR headset is constantly overwhelming your working memory with clutter, the wind is blowing too hard, the branches keep snapping back into place. Without perfectly engineered virtual scaffolding to protect your attention, permanent structural brain changes are simply impossible. Chapter 3: The Flow State Hacker. So once we start paving those neural trails, how do we make absolutely sure they don't fade away? Well, we have to stabilize the memory traces using a technique called interleaved practice. And the absolute magic number here is 20. 20 minutes. Imagine training for a grueling Ironman triathlon. If you spend 4 solid hours only swimming and then 4 solid hours only riding a bike, you're going to be great at the individual actions, but completely terrible at the transition. Instead, you rotate, you swim, you bike, and you practice the transition every 20 minutes. This forces the brain to constantly re-index its knowledge. It has to actively dig into long-term memory to switch gears, which acts as a heavy-duty, high-intensity workout for your synapses. Now, this is where the technology shifts from just impressive to almost sci-fi. Because modern VR doesn't just show you things, it watches you back. This is called effective tuning. The headset is actively monitoring your physiological state, your eye dilation, your heart rate variability, the microelectrical responses in your skin. It literally tracks your nervous system to know the exact millisecond your brain is reaching its breaking point. We are moving away from passive VR, where the difficulty is dumb and static, right into adaptive cruise control VR. Just like a smart car on the highway that senses you getting drowsy and gently nudges the steering wheel to keep you in the lane, the VR system senses your cognitive load spiking. Right before you mentally crash, the system automatically adjusts the throttle. It might dim the background noise or offer a really subtle, glowing visual hint, saving you from slipping into that defensive triage state we talked about earlier. This technology effectively hacks your brain. By calibrating the engagement perfectly to your exact neurological threshold, the machine locks you into the flow state. It keeps you right there, in that perfect Goldilocks zone, where the challenge is never too boring to make you lose focus, but never too overwhelming to paralyze you. This zone is where true, rapid mastery actually happens. Chapter 4: Precision Intervention. Let's apply this to a really high-stakes reality, like robotic surgery. A human surgeon's time to competency is severely limited by access to rare, expensive physical hardware. And in a real, physical operating room, a mistake is catastrophic. But in an optimized virtual environment, we can induce productive failure. Think about it. Traditional learning relies on a subjective piano teacher listening to you play, just sort of guessing when you're ready. But virtual reality acts as a digital oscilloscope. It measures the exact velocity of your movement vectors, the pinpoint precision of your eye gaze. It catches micro-stuttering, those invisible split-second pauses where your brain struggles to pull a memory. It catches the deficit before you even consciously realize you're struggling. Which brings us to your new AI sparring partner, driven by generative adversarial networks, or GANs. To stop you from just lazily memorizing a static routine, this AI constantly studies your biometric data and actively generates brand new scenarios tailored exactly to your deepest vulnerabilities. Once the AI knows you've mastered the basics, it starts throwing absolute curveballs, black swan events, sudden simulated emergencies, unexpected equipment failures, total chaotic shifts in the environment. It ruthlessly attacks your weaknesses, forcing you to move beyond simple memorization and into generative adaptation. And that ability to instantly adapt to chaos, that is the ultimate hallmark of a true expert. But we really have to pause here, because mapping cognitive load with this much precision carries a much, much darker implication. We aren't just logging test scores anymore. We are creating a highly granular, completely private blueprint of a person's internal mind. This is a map of exactly how fast their neurons fire, where their attention drifts, and the exact moment their mental fortitude fails. Treating this lightly is incredibly dangerous. This level of profiling demands the absolute strictest protection, treating someone's raw cognitive data with the exact same rigor as deeply private medical records. So, the crucial point we must leave with is this profound ethical line. We must ensure the virtual scaffolding leaves the learner more capable, not more dependent on the machine. If we prioritize ruthless cognitive optimization over the messy, uniquely human process of discovery, we risk creating a system of surveillance rather than education. Eventually, for any of this to matter, the scaffolding must fall away. We are standing at the end of the industrial, one-size-fits-all education model. The technology to radically accelerate human mastery is finally here. But as we plug our minds into these living, breathing digital extensions of our own cognition, we have to ask ourselves, will our virtual environments truly empower the human mind or simply optimize it into compliance?